2 months, 2 fighters tested positive for PEDs. One of them didn't even get suspended. Oscar Valdez was allowed to fight even though he failed for Phentermine. So what's your take on the WBC president Suleiman stating that Phentermine is not a PED in defense of Oscar Valdez?
I believe that he knows that is a lie. He straight up knows it's a lie. Okay. He, for whatever the number of years, 5 years or whatever it was, had the WBC following the VADA rules. All of a sudden, Bob Arum starts putting heat on him and all this other financial pressure and the rest of it. And he decides to move the goalpost and change the rules after the positive test occurs. This is a disgrace. He's an embarrassment to boxing. I mean, everybody knows. People like Andre Ward and Tim Bradley spoke out on ESPN saying this is pathetic. I mean, just ridiculous. And what was the basis of that decision? You're looking at this right here. You see this? That's what controlled that decision was money. Did he deserve to fight? Absolutely not. Did he likely get this Phentermine by accident? I don't think so. You're not going to find that in contaminated meat. These are dangerous drugs, amphetamine from that family. Phentermine is from the amphetamine family. And as you know, and I've stated previously, there have been several cyclists and other athletes, because EPO thickens your blood, and several athletes have died from that as well. But Phentermine, the stimulant, has also caused cardiac arrest or a heart attack, and there have been deaths. So that is a powerful drug. It enhances speed, recovery, endurance, power, stamina. Of course, it's a performance-enhancing drug. There's tons of science to promote that. So for the WBC president to come out and say it's not a performance-enhancing drug, that's like announcing, okay, by the way, I've decided I'm going to go back and the world is flat now. It's no longer round. That's how embarrassing that decision that he made is.
That's a great analogy. I couldn't have came up with a better analogy. Now, the WBC changed the rules now that Phentermine is not a PED.
So here's what you have to understand. They're continuing to have their boxers tested by VADA, but VADA doesn't adjudicate. So here's where the problem comes in. That's left up to the state commission. So Arizona, and then they picked them on that by the ABC, agreed with them to change this rule. So VADA just gives you the result. Here's a positive for Phentermine. What are you going to do with it? Then they made this wacky decision. So here's the point. And I know that a writer talked to Bob Bennett in Nevada and others, heads of different commissions, and they said, if, let's just say, and the example was given that during the Wilder and Fury fight, that one of them tested positive for Phentermine. The response from Bob Bennett was basically this. If they had submitted a doctor's prescription and there was medical reason, which would be weight loss in advance, then that would be okay. But if they hadn't declared this or submitted this, he just said there would be a problem, meaning that fight would probably not have went on in the state of Nevada. So that's what happened. It's not so much VADA's finding or that they turned it over. It's that the Arizona Commission, this tribal group out there in Arizona, and the WBC, due to pressure from Bob Arum, decided, listen, boxing's taking a hit here, the pandemic, we haven't been making much money, this is all good, bad, we need to figure out what to do about this, and whatever deal they made behind closed doors, they decided to move the goalposts in the middle of the game.
Wow. So you could legally take Phentermine now, have a doctor prescription for it, and get away with it. Oscar Valdez could do it again. VADA could say, hey, he failed for Phentermine, but now you're allowed to do it because the WBC is going to say, hey, that's fine.
Let me give you another example. When one of my fighters, Demetrius Andrade, fought BJ Saunders, and they popped him for a stimulant, okay? And the Massachusetts Commission upheld that finding. He lost his title. He lost a $2.3 million purse, and he was suspended for testing for a stimulant just similar to Valdez. So the Massachusetts Commission would have made a completely different decision than Arizona and the WBC. And of course, that was WBO.
Right. What I'm saying is, if Oscar Valdez fights again in his hometown, will the WBC allow him to fight again if he tests positive for Phentermine?
Well, they've established this precedent for sure, so they would probably be congruent with their previous decision, which is wrong. It's all wrong. Everything about that decision is wrong. It's unethical. It's all motivated by the cash.
That's my point that I was making, is that he could take it now legally as long he fights in his hometown and as long he continue to be the WBC champion. He could take this drug Phentermine and get away with it.
That's the message that decision gave, is that you can, but the caveat is what I just indicated, depends on where the fight is. So in a different commission, that's exactly what's wrong with boxing. Is it's not only that there's not enough testing, but when you do have testing and you do find a positive result and you turn that over to a commission, one may suspend the boxer and the other one may allow the fight to go on. So it's the wild, wild west still.
The WBC president, Suleiman, said it's not a PED, even though fighters in the past have died from this drug, Phentermine. Can you talk about that?
They started using this in the 1960s, mid 1960s, and I think the guy's name was Tom, whatever his last name was.
Tom Simpson. Tom Simpson.
He was from the UK and Tour de France rider. And in 1965, he won the BBC British Broadcast Communication Athlete of the Year. In 1967, in the middle of the Tour de France, he had cardiac arrest and died. So this became a very high profile story about this would be like the equivalent back then of like Lance Armstrong dying in the middle of a race. I mean, this guy was a world-class elite. He wasn't just some cyclist. And therefore, this was very widely reported. And there have been many others since then, cyclists and other athletes, because stimulants can cause your system, it increases your heart rate. And with each and every, they call it stroke volume, that with every heartbeat, you're pushing more blood and more blood. So when you combine that with exertion, you can cause cardiac arrest or heart attack. In sports where you cut weight, you don't think stimulants help you? Phentermine is called Adipex P, the trade name. That's an extremely popular weight loss drug that doctors prescribe. So where do you get this without a prescription? So this isn't in contaminated meat. So all of a sudden for Valdez to show up with this in his system and say, oh, I think I drank some herbal tea, I don't know. Do a search on Google. You will never find a single case where any tea has caused a positive drug test for Phentermine. This was the classic dog ate my homework BS story.
Obviously, Oscar Valdez, that's the excuse he used. He said that he received Phentermine from herbal tea. So you're saying there isn't any herbal tea or tea in the world that has Phentermine in it, right?
In the history of the world, there's never been one found to date. So that'd be, once again, that's like saying the world is flat. Trust me. I mean, it's such a ridiculous excuse. It's embarrassing that they would even come up with that. And I believe it was somebody from his legal team. Somebody was trying. Oh, I'll tell you exactly where that came from. Because it was such a popular weight loss drug, they actually came out with a generic product that you could buy that did not contain Phentermine, but they called it Phentermine herbal tea. But it didn't contain Phentermine. So they did it as a marketing ploy. So they came up with this because I'm sure his lawyer likely went on the computer and said, oh, look at this, Phentermine tea. But Phentermine tea does not contain Phentermine. It's just a complete bullshit marketing ploy. So they went with that because what else are they going to present? They had nothing valid, nothing credible, no receipts, no nothing. It was like, oh, I don't know. My dog ate my homework. Sorry. So I think that story has any credibility? Less than zero.
And he never submitted the herbal tea to VADA or anything like that.
No, but that's what you should do. That's how you mitigate the consequences. It only takes like 20 minutes to fill out these forms. I fill them out for most of the fighters that I work with and submit them. So why does it take day after day after day? And let me give an example. When Nonito Donaire fought Casimero, they dragged their heels for 7 days. Now, Memo Heredia, who was advising Casimero at the time, a known drug supplier, he said, I can clear any drug in 48 hours. Well, why, when they got the letter on Tuesday, did they not submit the forms until Saturday afternoon after the fight had already been canceled, because they'd been told every single day that they were going to cancel the fight if they don't get the forms in. Then they cancel the fight and mysteriously the forms show up. Then he was tested the following Tuesday, but that was 7 days after he got the original notice. So you need to get those forms in promptly, because as we just discussed, some of these drugs can clear in 24 to 48 hours.
Wow. Yeah, so there's plenty of loopholes you could get around by.
When you see people dragging their feet and not enrolling and giving excuses, they're likely tapering off drugs, waiting for the drugs to clear before they enroll.
In your opinion, if a fighter turned down VADA drug testing, they say no for no reason whatsoever, most likely they dirty, right?
I would say that the media needs to be all over them asking why you're not doing the testing, you know, and especially if the A side's willing to pay for it, or they're dictating that there's going to be testing. And why do you drag your heels? Why do you not do the testing? Seems like you have something to hide.
And to eliminate that issue, shouldn't VADA drug testing start as soon as fighters start negotiating instead of when they sign the contract? If you want to fight, you need to agree to VADA drug testing right now before we even negotiate. Would that eliminate some of the issue?
I don't know how you enforce that. How do you enforce when there is no fight that the testing start? Who's going to pay for it? I don't think the promoter is going to pay for it. I will tell you, my experience is this testing by VADA is fighter driven. It's not the promoters that want this testing. They don't want testing, because there's been several cases. Lamont Peterson, Andre Berto, where they've invested $250,000 to $500,000 in promoting these fights, and then somebody pops positive. They lose all that money. So they're certainly not looking to have more testing. The promoters themselves, there's a financial incentive there to not do testing. It comes from the boxers forcing, and they either pay themselves or have a sponsor that pays, or they demand that the promoter pays. But the testing is boxer driven. It's not promoter driven.
What a lot of people want to know is how much gains from cycling off steroids does a fighter benefit fight night? Is it by like 20%, 25% approximately? Does that boost his stamina, speed, power? Do you have any idea how much benefits they receive from cycling off PEDs if they do 8-week VADA drug testing?
So they can train longer, more repetition, faster, harder punches. And when you do that over a period of months during a training camp, of course the benefits are going to show up and you're going to perform better on fight night. So let's put it this way. What in my history, back in 2001 and 2, I helped a world-class sprinter named Tim Montgomery. They called him Tiny Tim. And he weighed 148 pounds. And we had a whole team of experts. Charlie Francis, the coach for Ben Johnson, was the track coach. Milo Sarchev, a professional bodybuilder, was involved in the strength and conditioning. And of course, we were using a whole array of performance-enhancing drugs. Something called the Clear, which is a modified, testosterone, insulin, EPO, thyroid, growth hormone, etc. And he gained, in 8 weeks of training, he gained from 148 to 176, 28 pounds. So his bench press increased from baseline was 265, and after 8 weeks he bench pressed 345. So you're talking an average in gains of 10 pounds per week for 2 months. Now, thereafter, he ran indoors and won the silver medal at the World Championships. Then outdoors, we cut him back down. He actually competed indoors at 168, 20 pounds over. And then at outdoors, he competed at 160, where he also won the silver medal as well. But the point I'm trying to make is these are very powerful drugs. It's virtually, you know, you can pick the right mom and dad, and that's important. But the gains that you make from using drugs, you wouldn't want to fight a guy that's on a full array of performance enhancing substances.
So the closer you can get away with it to fight night, cycling off steroids, the more benefits they will receive. Let's say I cycled off steroids 4 weeks before a fight for my upcoming fight, and then my partner, he cycled off PEDs 8 weeks before his fight. How much more benefit will I gain from taking PEDs than he does?
Well, the closer you can get to the fight, the better and greater the gains that you're going to retain. So this is why you see guys that drag their feet and don't sign up right away. And there have been guys in the past that have fought some of the snack fighters, and we have to chase them down. And they wait, and they don't send in the forms, and they give you excuses and blah, 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 blah. And that's because they want an opportunity for these drugs to clear their system, because the testers know that the minute that you sign that contract, oftentimes they're waiting on the side of the stage at the press conference, or they're there within 24 to 48 hours, because they understand that sometimes boxers miscalculate the taper period.
How long PEDs stay in your system? And does that vary for different PEDs?
Of course, it varies for different PEDs. And let me explain now, so people understand. Boxers or others who are subjected to testing, for the most part, are not doing anabolic steroids. They're doing testosterone. And the reason is because your body manufactures testosterone. It's an endogenous hormone. It's more difficult to differentiate between what your body creates and what you take from outside.
How long does that stay in your system? Doses of testosterone, PEDs, small doses of it. If they try to minimize the time span that it stays in your system in case they get random drug tested and they want to pass it. So what is the time span of that staying in your system? A week, 2 weeks, if you take small doses of testosterone?
Well, let's talk about a recent positive. The guy from Venezuela that was supposed to fight Benavidez is coming up here on the 13th of November. I can't pronounce his name, but
Usitegi
tested positive for EPO. Okay, now how long it takes to clear the system first depends upon the method of administration. If you inject it in your quadricep or you inject it into the adipose or fat tissue in your stomach, and depending upon the dose, if you do a normal dose, like typically the way it works is you do it what they call a therapeutic dosage initially, which means 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for 2 weeks. And that's to build up your red blood cell count. Thereafter, you reduce, you only take it 1 time a week. Now, when they're microdosing, instead of the 3 times or the 1 time, they take and divide that total dose, and they do it every day. So they do smaller amounts. If you do it, so by adipose tissue or like they do growth hormone or in your stomach, 43 hours, it's been shown. If you do it by IV, 19 hours, which means if you're doing a smaller dosage and you're timing it correctly, it can probably clear your system in 8 to 10 hours. So if you do it at night, by the time the testers come in the morning, you're going to be clear.
Well, that's going to be extremely difficult to catch a person like that that's doing that, though.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And like I say, what happens is that the boxers think that once they've passed that time on their whereabouts form that they've given for 1 hour a day that they'll be at the gym or wherever, they will say, okay, well, now I can do the injection so that it clears before the next day when they might come. Problem for that method is they're now showing up at gyms, they're showing up at boxers' houses at night because they understand what they're doing and how they're circumventing. So, I don't know exactly, when they went, because I don't have privy to any of that information. But obviously, this Venezuelan 168-pounder got busted for EPO. If you look just a short while back, the same thing happened with Pascal. He got busted for growth hormone and EPO. So you see that this cat and mouse game, that the testers are getting smarter and more boxers are getting busted.
To make it clear, that's during testing, right? But let's say before testing starts, off camp, before camp starts, let's say I'm a fighter, I'm taking small doses of testosterone and PEDs, so on and so forth. And then I have a fight coming up 8 weeks ahead. I have to sign the contract. I have to agree to VADA drug testing. What's the time span I need to clean my system, to clean my body, so I could pass VADA drug testing when I do start?
Depends upon the drug, but it's relatively quick. I'm talking a matter of days. Wow. So smart people that have experience with this and understand the way it works can definitely become a challenge to catch them using drugs. I'm just saying, that no testing program is foolproof.
From this conversation, you pretty much saying, even though VADA have all these strict rules and you guys on top of it, at the end of the day, if a fighter is cheating, it's not 100% you guys going to catch them every time.
That's correct. And I'm not formally affiliated with VADA in any way. I just refer fighters there, and anyone that will go. In the initial stages, we did have some meetings, and they asked me a lot of questions, and I provided my input. But they also talked to Dick Pound, the founder of WADA, and Don Catlin, the head of the Olympic testing lab at UCLA, and many other experienced people in the anti-doping world. Let me just elaborate on something that I just thought of, and that is this. A lot of this can be fixed by the boxers themselves. And what I'm working on, and I've been talking with Margaret Goodman about at VADA, is the group of fighters that I work with do VADA testing. So we're talking about Devin Haney, we're talking about Demetrius Andrade, we're talking about Julian Williams, we're talking on and on. I think that Nonito Donaire would be also willing to do this. A program could be put together where they could establish a 24/7, 365 program. There would be, you can't pin down the number, but about monthly or testing, maybe 8 times a year, 10 times a year, random.
Hold it, you're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I still got the wall. I got the wall.
I bear witness, there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his final messenger. That's what I said, Larry, on the Bungle fight. Thanking you.
They call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.